What's up, everybody? This is Joe Arpasi, otherwise known as Purple Rain. For those of you that are new to my channel, I started my CFF work back in 2008 as a co-owner of the website College Football Geek, and I ran that site until 2016 when Operation shut down. I took some time off and came back here in the year 2024 under the new moniker Purple Rain, and you are watching the Let Purple Rain podcast. Please like and subscribe. We're going to have all sorts of new content coming to you in 2025. You're not going to want to miss a single episode. And you can find all of my work over at letpurplerain.com, where I'm offering a free 7-day trial so you can see everything that our premium subscribers have access to absolutely free. Today, I am joined by Mr. RotoWire, John McKechnie. You can find him on X at Johns underscore tailgate. And welcome to the show, John. You're my second guest here on the podcast. I'm feeling pretty honored here, having some big names coming on the show. We had Campus Canton with Chris Moxley on before you here, and then now having you guys from RotoWire and you personally coming on the show is really nice. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your history, what it is that you do at RotoWire?
All right, so my RotoWire journey began back in 2014. I interned up in Madison, Wisconsin, where HQ is. My first paid gig with them while I was finishing up school at UGA. That fall was covering the Big Ten, and so that was sort of my indoctrination into the Big Ten world and like really kind of getting deep in the weeds in the college football ranks. I mean, Akram Wadley, Mikey Dudek, those types of guys that year. Tevin Coleman, some real CFF legends. So how could I not fall in love with it? So about a year or so after that, I moved back up to Madison, took over the college football editing position in 2016. Stuck with that all the way through 2022 season. Obviously, it was kind of a weird, funky time, especially earlier on in the tenure because college football DFS kind of went away for a couple of years, and that kind of changed the complexion of the college football world and for our purposes. And additionally, sports betting wasn't a big thing yet. The bill hadn't passed at that point. So really focused on just season long content, all that good stuff. And then DFS comes back, the light comes on for picks and props and sports betting, all that stuff. And it's really kind of taken off since then. I've changed roles since then, but I made sure that I'm still involved in our college football content. Chris Benzine runs the show for us now, but I still write our college football DFS articles for DraftKings on the main slate every week during the season.
It's very cool. You mentioned when the first round of DFS in college, when it went away, and I think that was around 2015. That ended up kind of being the death nail for College Football Geek. We had sold off to a partner, an ownership company, and after the 2016 season without the DFS, they just kind of decided to fold us. And back then, I was doing DFS content, all of it for College Football Geek. I just don't have the time to do it now. I was mentioning this in the last episode as well about the receivers. But DFS is fun, and fortunately, here in Indiana, where I live, we're not able to win money doing DFS, so I haven't gotten back into to doing that. And you mentioned sports betting. One of my favorite things. I go to your guys' site every single week during the season. I love the section that you guys have on RotoWire for pulling up the spreads and everything on the college games. While I'm doing my research, guys, I like to find really good, easy to find resources that give you the data you need in a nice, clean manner. And over at RotoWire, you can download a spreadsheet of everything that they're giving you for the spreads. That's what I use when I'm pulling all the lines for the week. I'm trying to see how many points is Vegas expecting teams to go to. I go to RotoWire for that information because I can just go to one page. I can hit download to an Excel spreadsheet, and I'm off and running for my website. And RotoWire, you guys are for a number of your content. You guys are subscription based, a lot like Let Purple Rain is. What's some of the favorite stuff that you guys do over at RotoWire, whether it's during the season, off season? What's some of the the things that you think are pretty unique that you guys offer that the audience should know about?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the comments on our betting side. I think that that's something that's really kind of taken off over the last few years, and our tech guys are just phenomenal, easy to work with, and really sharp. And they themselves are they're just like a little bit behind the scenes. When I go back up to the office in Madison, they're the tech department are the only guys that are really in there every single day. And I'll walk in and they're like watching Australian rules football and just like going nuts about prize picks. Like just they're just like us. They just happen to be incredible tech wizards at the same time. So they know what the sports fan wants. So they're able to deliver that. And thank you again for the odds pages and uh, all that good stuff. But beyond that, I mean, I love writing the college football DFS articles. Beyond that, I think our spring practice preview stuff for every conference is a nice kind of in-depth way to kind of get ahead of the game, kind of start studying early for the upcoming season. And, it's an important time of the year in this era where transfer decisions are made shortly after, kind of how job battles are shaking out in spring. That's an important kind of tracker that we have there. But beyond that, recently launched a picks and props tool, and we've got a data scientist working on that. So really sharp stuff, really easy to digest type of data, and it kind of shows you a full breakdown on what to look at for really any number of player props that are being offered out there. So I think that's like the cool new thing that has been brought into the fold here at RotoWire.
You mentioned the spring coverage that you guys do. Uh, one thing that's unique about, and not for a good reason, that's unique about college fantasy football is there's no clean resource you can go to see exactly what depth charts are for different schools. And you mentioned doing the spring previews, looking at the transfer portal guys, where they settle, and then trying to estimate how everything shakes out. And all of us analysts have to do that work. And you're kind of taking information from here, information from there, and then your own insights to try and figure out, each person to figure out where do I think things are going to shake out. And a lot of us do use RotoWire's depth charts as one of those resources that we go and look to. So I also want to plug that you guys do because it ties into what you're mentioning with the spring camp stuff. And this is another great thing that you have. I believe your full depth charts are for subscribers. Is that correct?
I'm fairly certain. I don't know because I just have an account because I work
Oh
there,
yeah.
so I'm not totally sure what is and isn't behind the paywall as far as that particular content is concerned. But I do believe like our rankings,
Oh
projections,
yeah, that stuff
um, and
is.
and yeah, that's all paywalled. But the depth charts
I
not
think it
positive,
might
but
be. I think it might be. I'm willing to bet it's one of those where you guys give like a couple of teams that you can look at, and then the rest might be that way. And you mentioned the tech guys too, so I want to throw out another thing that you guys are really good at. They have a great back end that will tie in, all of the different players that are in their system. Those players feed into a whole bunch of the tools that they have. So I mentioned the depth charts. Each player profile that they have on the site is connected in through the depth charts. It's connected in through their projections. And so they have this great integrated back end where it's not just a list of names, but it's this detailed database of names that then filters into each tool so you can cleanly go through if you're looking at projections and you want to click on a guy's name, it's going to take you to his profile. That profile is going to be it's going to have a section where you're going to see all the player news for that player, and your tech guys do a great job with that whole back end integration with the player database as well.
yeah, no, it just makes like my life a lot easier, just how easy it is to use the site and how kind of intuitive and how the player pages just kind of have everything you need to know from game logs, historical game logs. You can kind of click if you want to kind of peel off a certain sample for a player, like how he's been doing over the last 3 weeks. You can just, kind of click and isolate that sample and it will spit out averages and totals for all of that stuff. So very interactive that way, and it's super helpful for my research and anyone who uses it. That's definitely going to be something that gets you going.
Yeah, any of you guys watching, if you haven't already, you definitely want to check out how good those integrated features are. Now we're going to change gears here and talk about the episode that you are watching. You are watching the 2024 CFF Top Gun Challenge, where you have some of the best CFF websites on the internet challenging to see who is the best of the best at preseason player projections. Today we are in round 3 and we are reviewing the running back position. For full coverage of the 2024 CFF Top Gun Challenge, you can find everything in the articles at letpurplerain.com. There's going to be a link in the description to this running back article here, and you'll be able to see every ounce of detail. We can't go through everything here in the podcast. It'll already be pretty long, but just want to make sure that you guys understand. Go in the description. You'll find a link to that article. And now that we've gotten all that out of the way, let's dive into some college fantasy football. All right. We'll kind of do a quick review here of items for the Top Gun Challenge, and we'll start off with the class of 2024 for the CFF Top Gun Challenge. We have 4 websites competing this year. We have Campus to Canton, Let Purple Rain, RotoWire, and the CFF site. We've been talking about RotoWire here. I highly recommend all these websites. If you've not taken any time, go check them out. There's a link to each website in the description below. And when you look in the class of 2024 section of the article that's on letpurplerain.com, you can click on any of their names. It'll take you to their website. Everybody here is great resources and really knowledgeable. So I want to make sure everybody's getting their shout outs here. And going into our overview of how the CFF Top Gun Challenge works. In order for a website to enter the competition, they must provide full player stats in their preseason projections, and they must have a minimum of 360 players in their preseason projections. Scoring system is pretty normal. I'm just have 3 items on the screen just in case they might differ from your home leagues. There's a 0.05 passing yards, 4-point passing touchdown, and a half PPR. For the positions being reviewed, we are reviewing the top 40 quarterbacks, the top 60 running back and receivers, and the top 20 tight ends. When we go through and we look at these positions, we'll take a look at the projection that a website provides. We'll compare it to the actual fantasy points scored by that player, and we'll calculate what's called a fantasy point differential, which is the difference between those two numbers. The lower that differential points are, the more accurate that the projection was. And what we'll do is for each position review, we'll take every single player that a website did projections on, we'll take those differential points, and then we'll work out an average number. And that's how we review how well each website did in that position group. In the article, you'll see it listed as a total differential, total average. We're basically talking the same thing here. And whichever website has the lowest differentials, that's who did the best of the position group. And when you're looking at how everybody finished in the position group, we give competition points for each round of review. So if you get first place in a position group, you're going to earn 6 competition points. Second place is worth 3 points. Third place is worth 1 point. Those will be added up through each round, and the website with the most competition points at the end of the 2024 CFF Top Gun Challenge will be named champion. We'll do a quick little review here of the current standings. Right now, we've had 2 position groups completed, 2 rounds, the tight end and the wide receivers, and we have a wide open competition. And we have a tie for first place between the CFF site and Let Purple Rain. We each have 7 competition points. And a tie for third place right now between Campus to Canton and RotoWire, who each have 3 competition points. I mentioned everybody's in the mix here. There are a total of 12 first place competition points still up for grabs. We're here at the midway point. At this midway point, John, how do you feel about where RotoWire is? That you guys are still in the hunt. I mean, on the screen, you guys are on the bottom, but you guys are still in the hunt. Anybody can win this. So how are you feeling from your performance halfway through, and how are you hoping that you guys finish out?
Well, obviously we have our work cut out for us. Super competitive, like you mentioned. I mean, all 4 of these sites, ours included, and everyone else, really top drawer. Everyone bust their butt over the summer to get these projections as tightened up as possible, and some of it is some guesswork. We got to figure out what the depth charts end up looking like in season. There's a lot of moving parts to the college realm. So projecting is a tricky business, but I'm pretty confident in our process here, and I think that how we did on the running backs, as we'll see, I think turned out to be pretty solid work.
I definitely agree on that. And talking about running backs here, kind of go over some of our thoughts for the running back group as a whole. Some of my observations, some early ones I had is, there were a lot of major injuries this year, early in the year for some big names that kind of shuffled some things up a bit. Uh, we tend to see, I noticed that more of these Power Four schools are using the transfer portal to build depth, and we're seeing a lot more split carry situations where guys can come in like we thought Trevor Etienne would go into Georgia, be the bell cow back. Yes, he had injuries, but it seems to me like these coaches want to keep people healthy. They want to try and make a run now with the expanded playoff, and they're not afraid to use a lot more 1-2 punches so their team can be more competitive as compared to like the G5 schools, where it seems like when they do get a really good running back, and especially by the time they hit conference play, they just lean on those studs because they know those guys are probably gone in the portal. So it seems like we have two very different worlds for how the running backs are being used for carry distribution between Power Four and G5. Have you noticed something similar?
Yeah, definitely. And I think Georgia's a good example, and it made even more sense coming into the season with the injuries behind Trevor Etienne and the lack of experience there on the depth chart. Like we didn't really know what Nate Frazier was going to be as a true freshman. So with Roderick Robinson and Branson Robinson being dinged up, it's like okay, it's going to be the Etienne show. Did not end up being the case, or for us college fantasy guys, like we love Trevion Henderson, we love Quinshawn Judkins, but we were concerned about what's that split going to look like. But we
Hmm.
kind of also thought, hey, Chip Kelly's taking over. That's a guy that can scheme up the run game. Like they're just going to kind of be unstoppable on the ground. Like even 12 to 15 carries each is going to get it done most weeks. But it still kind of created a tough decision for us during draft season as to how it was going to shake out. Henderson being the guy that's long been with the program. Judkins, the new guy who they, made a big effort to go bring in, but then everyone's kind of starting on that level playing field with the new offensive system. So that was a tricky one. I think additionally, college fantasy can be so funny in the way that the first round can end up playing out. Like in the NFL, if the 1-1 player like Christian McCaffrey, for example, like if he underperforms, it's almost always 100% injury related. But sometimes the guys that we are so certain about can just kind of be a bust. Khalil Tate, I think from as a quarterback a couple years ago at Arizona was a great example of that. Everyone was like, okay, sneaky Heisman candidate type of guy, completely falls flat. And I think Ollie Gordon, unfortunately, kind of wore that crown this year as the guy that there's a lot of thought, especially an underdog where it's just power four only that he's the slam dunk 1-1. And in full universe leagues, Ashton Genty or Ollie Gordon were going to be the top two picks in any given league. And that kind of determined a lot of leagues right there off the jump. If you mispicked there and you went with Gordon over Genty, like you really kind of set yourself back. So it was unfortunate what how this season played out for Gordon, but stuff happens.
Well, and the funny thing too is Gordon was not in one of these split backfields. That like we're
Right.
talking about. Like so, he wasn't in a situation like Miami. There's another good example where Martinez comes in. It's like, hey, all right, we have a bell cow back who can handle a heavy workload. He's going to slip right in there, and they still didn't do that. And so that is one of my takeaways that I'm putting in the back of my head for moving forward. Because, in my opinion, if you're a fantasy guy, you're greedy. And if you're doing projections and you see like Damian Martinez go to Florida, like you naturally just want to say, okay, 20 carries a game. Like you want to think in that greedy mindset. But I think like for myself, going into the projections for this upcoming season, like I'm gonna be tapering things down a little bit and just thinking like, I don't know how many of these bell cow backs we're really gonna get at the power five or the power four level, but that that group of five, we definitely can see that, and it's difficult too. Is like we had some young guys really break out this year, but they usually don't break out at the start of the year. So it's something that gets observed as the year goes on. But what I kind of noticed, especially since we're talking about projections, we're talking about trying to guess depth charts. When I kind of view things, I've really kind of cemented looking back this year that it seems like running back is still an upperclassman dominated position, especially at the start of the year. And one of the things that doesn't go into fantasy, but I kind of think back to my coaching days. Like, I think it comes down to pass protection. Like, guys who know what they're doing tend to get on the field more, and especially when you have to be integrated in that pass protection. And so, like, an underclassman who we might think, oh, he could be a third down back, catch some balls. If he doesn't know how to pick up blitzes, he's not going to see the field. So another one of my observations has been, lean less on. I mentioned before, lean less on bell cow backs at Power Four schools. Lean a little more into upperclassmen or guys that have experience for having an edge at the start of the year. And it's just because these August depth charts, the info's not that great. So leaning on those two things, I do think is something that I'll be doing quite a bit as we look at next year. And kind of going over, I want to go over some stats of things that I noticed looking at the running backs as a whole, looking at this group of guys, these top 60 that we're reviewing. And, there were some guys like the Ashton Genties that lived up to their potential. We had six of all four of our websites, our consensus top 20 in the preseason finished in the top 20. So it's not a great number there, 30%. But there were some guys that lived up to their potential. We did have a lot of guys, like you mentioned, Ollie Gordon, big names that came up short. Five guys in the preseason consensus top 20 fell in between numbers 21 and 60, and nine of our consensus preseason top 20 didn't even land in the top 60. So, I mean, almost half of who all of us websites thought were in the top 20 didn't even make the top 60 for this review. So, it is kind of surprising a bit, especially knowing with some of the transfers, with some of the setups, and part of that might just be these freshmen that popped up, or the the group of five schools, that came out of nowhere, and these new names that emerged. 27 of the guys that finished in the postseason top 60 were ranked outside of our consensus 100. So almost half of this group that we're reviewing for the Top Gun Challenge didn't even, they're all triple digit ranks. So that was kind of surprising to me because that felt more like, when I looked at that stat, that felt more like something that you'd expect at wide receiver. What do you think?
Yeah, no, the variance at running back was kind of jarring this year, and yeah, I mean, so many guys just kind of came out of the woodwork. I think another kind of theme that we can and lesson that we can take away from this year is like Pitt, for example, because they didn't change their head coach, but they brought in a new offensive coordinator from an FCS school in Western Carolina, and who comes with him? Desmond Reed. And we still didn't really know exactly how it was going to pan out. I mean, you look at the frame, the measurements, and it's like, well, is he really going to be able to take on this massive workload at the ACC level, making the jump up in a weight class from the FCS? And, it certainly helped that Rodney Hammond got ruled ineligible shortly before the season. But even still, for him to do what he did, especially in the early part of the season before he kind of wore down, it's just systematically, it's important to like keep in mind how schools are changing up their scheme, and if there is someone that's coming along for the ride with their former coach or former OC, they might have a little bit of favoritism towards them, and in Reed's case, it was deservedly so.
Oh, yeah. For those of you that haven't been following news, Bill Belichick is now the head coach at North Carolina. And funny that they forced a guy out who was too old and brought in a guy who's really old. But um, I saw, and I don't remember a lot of the specifics off the top of my head, but I saw it yesterday. Belichick offered a scholarship to an SCS running back. I want to say maybe from Penn. I just don't remember. But yeah, like already seeing that happening right now in the transfer portal again. Which when I saw that, I was thinking about Pitt. And I'm like, oh man, I'm gonna have to pull so many FCS team stats with these new coaches and some of these players and stuff. I'm not looking forward to it. Oh, well, why don't we transition here into talking about our top five fantasy running backs from the 2024 season? If you want to see a full breakdown of all of the top 60 running backs, you can go to the article that I have on letpurplerain.com. Once again, you're going to find a link in the description below. And we'll start off here with the number five running back, Cameron Scadaboo from Arizona State. And he was a preseason consensus number 25. Everybody knew about him from last year. It was a year one for a new coach, new offensive system. But a lot of us did have. It was one of those, like, it was hard to push him too high in your projections, but a lot of us had a good feeling about his potential this year, and his role just exploded. In 2023, he had 164 carries. This year, it ballooned to 247 carries, and he scored over 100 more fantasy points than last year. He finished at 318.5 fantasy points, and it's always hard to predict that big of a year two jump in an offensive system. And when we look at this year, Let Purple Rain and CFF Site were the two closest. Like, all of our point differentials are pretty high because of that huge increase in workload. But Let Purple Rain point differential was at 110.10. CFF Site was at 117.25. You guys came in at 133.3. And, your thoughts on, like, are you big into looking at guys that can have a year two jump in their systems? Are you someone that does predict, a good bump? Obviously, this bump was insane, but, like, kind of, do you peek into any of that year two window?
Well, I think those type of schools where year one, or as Bill Connolly calls it, year zero, and that Arizona State certainly qualified last year,
Mhm.
right? I mean, they Herm Edwards left a mess, and Kenny Dillingham did the best that he could in 2023 in his first year, and it's like, okay, they have a bit of a pulse. I could see them maybe outperforming projections, but at the end of the day, like, coming into the year, I believe they were they had the longest odds to win the Big 12, and I thought that made sense to me. And it's Scatterboo had a 45% rushing share last year, and it's like you're and we'll kind of come back to this theme throughout the show, but 45% is a very significant number. And if you project further than that, you're really kind of putting your neck out there and into kind of outlier territory. And beyond him just taking on that role increase that was pretty dramatic from what was already a strong share. We're talking about a near yard per carry boost per carry, and insane pass production efficiency as well. I mean, 8.7 yards per target last year was a very strong number for running back. Almost 11 yards per target this
Wow.
past year. I mean, that's just insane. Like, you're not going to project that. I don't care who you are, how confident you are in a guy. Like, 11 yards for a running back is that's pretty wild. So all of that combined with Arizona State just taking this unexpected giant leap forward, all of that kind of created this perfect storm where look at us now. Arizona State, number 4 seed in the playoff, amazing.
I know, and who would expect that big of a quarterback play jump from a young quarterback, or that type of, like you said, yards per reception from arguably a bruiser running back? He's not Caleb. Shoot, I'm forgetting his name. The freshman over at LSU. Um, oh,
Oh, dang.
done something.
He was on
I'm
my
brain
team
farting.
too.
Yeah, I'm brain farting. I have him in my home league as a potential keeper. But yeah, like he's not one of those guys that you just see being shifty and explosive, in the open field. So that was kind of interesting in my opinion with Scadaboo. Moving here to running back four, we have Caleb Johnson from Iowa, probably the waiver wire player of the year. He was the only player in the top five that was ranked outside of the top 30 in the preseason. He finished with 321.5 fantasy points. And, some of the interesting things here. So, Let Purple Rain, I was the only site that had him as a running back one. That's why you're seeing my preseason rank at number 46. Everybody else on the screen, guys, the kind of the consensus talk throughout the spring, throughout the summer, is that you were looking at LaShawn Williams. People felt like he was a more talented guy. He did have a bit more experience, and and I know you guys, along with Campus to Canton CFF site, one of the reasons why your Caleb Johnson is so low is just because he was projected as a running back too. So I do want to kind of point that out to the audience. You can't really see it. I can't kind of throw that in because we're talking about Caleb Johnson here, but that's one of the bigger reasons. So I just kind of was ahead of the curve thinking that you would have Caleb Johnson as the number one. But I have my my draft guide open, and it was kind of like I had it a split carry situation. I had Caleb Johnson as the running back one, getting, I'm just going to round it up, one carry. Getting 200 attempts, 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns. And I had LaShawn Williams as a running back two with 117 carries, 500 yards, 7 touchdowns. Um, so it was one of those, like, I was viewing it like it'd probably be a split back situation. I didn't expect to see someone, and it sounds like you guys too, looking at, like nobody expected a monster volume pig running back coming through here. And that's one of the biggest reasons why you guys are kind of seeing the results on the screen. Um, would you agree, like first year, new offensive system, and like projecting this sort of workload that Johnson got, and it wasn't even a full season's worth, at that level. Like it's going to be a theme, guys, as you're watching the show. Like, so hard to predict a ridiculous workload like this.
Oh, it absolutely is, and like you said, that this is systematic change there at Iowa. Thought they might be a little bit more balanced, maybe pull this thing out of the Stone Age, but they, when apparently when you have a guy like Caleb Johnson, you don't need to do that. They ran it like 58% of the time in 23. They bumped that to 65.7% run rate this year, so they really just kind of went heavy on the ground, and again with good reason. So Caleb Johnson just kind of emerged. I think that there were some promising metrics through his first 2 seasons at Iowa to lead you to believe that he's going to be a solid player. But we did think it was going to be LaShawn Williams taking it on, and have it be something of a committee. I think we had LaShawn Williams projected for like 38% of the carries, and Caleb Johnson around 25% of the carries. So we thought we'd see triple digit carries from Caleb, but nothing quite to this extent where he just completely took over the backfield one and put forth a truly dominant performance that puts him, firmly in like the day two, maybe even end of day one type of range for the NFL draft.
I agree on that. I mean, he might be the best NFL ready guy in this draft. And maybe a lesson for all of us sites to learn here. You talked about the spring previews that you guys do. And if we just kind of rewind in our minds, where was Iowa last spring? Their offense was a joke. They went out, hired a good offensive coordinator, put in a new system. And I remember when I was looking at the stats and everything, I was like, okay, there's actually a passing element to this game, and so trying to figure out where the running backs fit in. The running backs are still good historically in this offensive system, but all throughout the spring, all throughout fall camp, just the reports never changed. The fact that it's the same quarterbacks as last year, and they're still dog crap. So I think we should have been better. Like, yeah, maybe they're not going to pass the ball as much as the historical stats show for this new offense. Maybe they have to keep it on the ground because they have Edward Scissorhands at quarterback, and they got three of them. You know,
Yeah.
so I mean that's kind of one of my takeaways looking at this Iowa situation, and trying to think of, and part of why we like doing this CFF Top Gun challenge is like it gets us to think about ways that we can get better for the next year's projections and give you guys a better product in the end as well.
Exactly.
Okay, our running back three, we're switching over to North Carolina with Omarion Hampton. And when you're looking at Hampton, him along with Ashton Genty, they were the most accurate running backs for preseason rank to postseason finish with this group of websites. He was ranked number 5 consensus in the preseason, finished number 3 with 324.3 fantasy points. And he had similar rushing stats to 2023. There was only 28 more carries, not that much when you're a bell cow back, but the receiving stats really jumped up this year. And I kind of find that funny too when you go through a quarterback change and you see a big increase. He had a 37% increase in targets from 2023 to 2024. I mean, stat wise, it came out to an extra 151 yards and 1 touchdown. But that might be one of these things. Another lesson learned of like new, young, untested quarterbacks. They may not be pushing the ball down the field as much and doing more of the dump down passes to the running backs. And I didn't think about that in my projection. Both you guys and myself, we are the only sites that had less than a 100 point differential difference. I came in at 46 point differential. You guys came in at 75.7. Um, and you had a pretty both CFF site and Campus Canton were pretty close to one another. But this was one of those guys. I had him. We both had him preseason ranked number three, so we were both more favorable, liking Hampton in the summer than the rest of the competition group here. What were some of your thoughts about Hampton going into the year with the changes that were going on at quarterback, and what led you to a lot like me here, still keep him pretty high and not knock him down.
Right. So, I mean, he was, I wouldn't say like an easy projection necessarily because, again, like UNC, you lose a guy like Drake May, like things are going to look different. So you kind of have to make some inferences on what the shape of that offense is going to look like. We thought that they might be a little bit more balanced, but they ended up, or it made more sense for them to be more run heavy generally. I mean, we had him with kind of an outlier rushing share. We projected him for 55% of North Carolina's rushing attempts. And somehow, even with that, high of a number, we still didn't go far enough. And we kind of expected also when you stack on even more volume to what was already a pretty big workload, he had 5.9 yards per carry in 2023. You kind of think that, maybe it goes down to like 5.5, something like that. But no, he took on the added volume and stuck with that efficiency. And then, like you said, the kind of cherry on top for his production this year, being the lack of experience at quarterback, they're going to look to check down a little bit more often. And Hampton, rose to the challenge. It's not like he had an incomplete grade necessarily as far as his pass catching work was concerned, but hard to project a jump of that nature there. But all told, like you said, we were in on this guy coming into the season. We were comfortable having high projection numbers for him because we thought he could deliver, and he absolutely did.
And it's interesting too because everything that you're mentioning, it normally screams, regression in stats. Like you mentioned, like yards per carry. There's no way he's gonna have more than a 55% carry, share, and so like a lot of common logic went to actually downgrading him a bit, and that's probably a thought process at Campus Canton and CFF site that and also new quarterback. I use this in my weekly player rankings, but I like to look at third down conversion rates. So if you have a new quarterback and you're not converting as many third downs, you're not keeping drives alive as much, guys aren't getting into the red zone as often. There's a trickle down effect from third down conversions. And so, that common logic could say, hey, there's going to be regression here. I'm like you. Yeah, I just felt like he's one of the safest bell cows. We know how he fits in that system, um, and one of the things that each of these guys were talking about at the start of the show when we were talking about the running backs, I was mentioning I'm seeing more split carry situations with these Power Four schools. And every guy that we've reviewed so far is at a Power Four school, and they're like the outliers. So there's not a ton of guys like this out there. It's hard finding them now. But when you find them, I think they're so much more valuable. And these carry shares, these fantasy points. It might just kind of be like there's this shifting gap between the workhorses and the split carries. It's just kind of growing each year, and it's tough to say. It's one of these things because the portal is changing things so dramatically, and we're all still kind of observing. I think like, just like the coaches are still observing, trying to figure out how do we navigate this best. And there's a lot of colleges now that are they have GMs that are on their staff, and so it's like I think these programs are even kind of realizing we might have to shift to this hybrid, half recruiting, half NFL model for managing a roster. So it's going to be interesting, but I did want to throw that out. Like every one of these guys that we're covering, they're kind of the anomaly now. There's not a ton of guys that you can really count on like this because there are a lot of guys that we thought would be like this, and they didn't live up to their workload carry. So just and one of those guys who I thought was going to be that way, who had a big workload before, and there were a lot of changes in the offseason, and I was like, there's no way this guy's going to maintain the same workload, and that's RJ Harvey here from UCF. He managed to finish running back number two, and I mentioned the changes that UCF had in the offseason. Um, you had a new offensive system with Gus Malzahn. You had the addition of Penny Boone through the transfer portal, and you had KJ Jefferson come in at quarterback. And so you had a lot of question marks of, okay, we love the system. There's going to be tons of rushing opportunities, but now you've got a big, strong, kind of like a tight end sized quarterback who is in a quarterback run heavy system. You have Penny Boone, who we all figure like he's the top running back. Like he is the best guy out of this group. Or excuse me, RJ Harvey's the best guy out of this group. But Penny Boone, there was this worry that I had, like, okay, could he be a touchdown vulture down in the red zone, or could he be that like RJ gets him from 20 to 20 and then boom comes in the red zone. It was genuine concerns that I think all of us had in the offseason. And what did RJ do? He just finished with 345.3 fantasy points on a similar carry workload that he had in 2023. The biggest thing that really jumped out, and I was talking about those red zone concerns, he scored six more touchdowns than he had last year. So to me, that was the craziest thing, is that he didn't have this big cut in his carries, and he got even more touchdowns when two potential touchdown vultures came in. I mean, would you agree that that was a big worry when it came to Harvey here?
Absolutely. I think, I had kind of long wondered if KJ Jefferson, like, what was just kind of like if Gus Malzahn had like a mural of KJJ on his wall before he even like recruited him, because it felt like he's such a Gus quarterback. And I thought that, he would come in there, and I thought that we could see, double digit rushing touchdowns from KJ Jefferson, but obviously things didn't swing that way. But when you're thinking about that way over the summer, you are going to naturally kind of make it tougher in your projections for a guy like RJ Harvey to beat what he did last year with those new factors coming in. So I was mostly worried about Jefferson, but Penny Boone was definitely, what we thought was going to be a nice addition for them. After what he did in the MAC. So it's like, okay, like Harvey should be like the tip of the spear. Like he should, get at least a third of the rushing workload there, and Boone's going to get some, Jefferson's going to get some, but we don't really safely project almost anybody to run for 20 touchdowns in a given season. Like maybe we
Mm.
did with like Jonathan Taylor, or maybe we did with Ashton Genty this year, but we reserve that for like one, maybe two guys in a given season. And for Harvey to not only just like match his touchdown production from a year ago, which we thought was going to come down from 15, but to score over 20, that was definitely, kind of a wow moment. And I think just kind of in a meta sense for me, I seem to just always have a problem getting it right with Central Florida guys or UCF guys. I was always like an Isaiah Bowser doubter. And I was like, oh, these random transfers that come in, they're gonna just eat off his plate. No, Bowser ended up being a totally fine CFF player if those people invested in him. So I've always struggled with UCF for whatever reason.
Well, you're going to struggle with him again this year with Scott Frost coming back.
Oh my God.
I mean, I keep a historical database that I use for my projections. It goes back to 2018. I don't track the 2020 year, but like I pulled it up when I saw Scott Frost, and I was like, because I couldn't remember how long ago he was at UCF. I'm like, oh man, all I have are Nebraska stats.
Oh no.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like,
Tainted sample.
exactly. That's like not the best sample to use here. But looking at like how we all perform with Harvey, it looks like Campus to Canton was the best in preseason rank. They had him at running back five. The rest of us were all in the teens and 20s. So good job there to Campus to Canton. When it came to the projections, Campus to Canton and Let Purple Rain were the two best. Myself, I came in best of the group at 123.7 point differential. Campus to Canton nipping on my heels at 129.03. And then both you guys and CFF site really close to one another, even though there's like a difference of 9 preseason ranking spots. You guys were, I mean, less than 7 fantasy point differential points away. So it's one of those. I'm agreeing with you. Like it's difficult to be able to project how he turned out with every factor that we knew over the course of the summer. He definitely was a surprise player. And one guy that was not a surprise player whatsoever is our running back one, Ashton Genty from Boise State. All preseason we had that debate. Who is RB1 for fantasy this year? Is it Genty? Is it Gordon? By now we all know Genty won it big, big. Everybody had him as kind of a consensus number one or two. Campus to Canton, the one outlier of this, they had him at running back six, but it's kind of because of that six, it raised up the consensus rank that we had in the preseason to number three. But I just say he was pretty much number one or number two, and he played out that way. He scored 422 fantasy points. And what's crazy about that 422 number, he sat out a bunch of time in second halves during blowouts. Um, and imagine if you would have played, let's say, up until the 5 minute mark of the fourth quarter in every game. How insane his stats could have been. But this 422 number, this actually is a historic performance by Genty. So to put in some perspective, I mentioned before, I keep a stat database that goes back to 2018. So I went through 2023 to 2018, and I saw that no running back had scored 400 fantasy points in a single season. The closest guy to do it was Jonathan Taylor at Wisconsin in 2019. He had 394.5 fantasy points over a 14 game stretch. Genty did 422. We're going to say 12 games, but would you agree with me? He kind of did it in like 11, 10 and a half games,
Yeah,
I mean,
unreal.
it really, so it's one of those things of like, we had a historic performance this year by Genty. And, so it's one of these things you look across the board at the fantasy point differentials from every site. They're going to be big. I mean, you literally had a record breaking historic season. Nobody's going to be close on this one. And you guys did the best over at RotoWire. You guys had 110.3 fantasy point differential. I'm kind of right behind you there at 115.9, and CFF site not too far behind me at 125 fantasy point differential. So, the three of us here that all had them as one or two in the preseason rankings, our projections were all pretty close within, 14-point difference of each other. Um, so, it's, I think the three of us did as well as we could. Campus to Canton's lower, but at the same time, I think that projection reflects the fact that they viewed him as a running back six. So it kind of goes hand in hand, I think, with that. But your observations about Genty this year and just how amazing his performance was, like I said, historic.
Right. So we projected Boise State to run it 57% of the time. We had that right, and we bumped him up as far as his carry share to 45%. So, we're talking about a run heavy offense and the engine of that offense when it comes to Genty's numbers. But I think where we might have fallen a little bit short was with the departure of Taylor Green and a move to a more, kind of prototypical pocket passer type of guy, there's going to be less quarterback runs that are taken away from Genty, more carries getting funneled to him. So that's kind of where we fell short. But I mean, like you said, we projected him as one of the best, if not the best. I guess we did have Gordon, so whoops. But at the same time, like I was saying earlier, we don't project many guys to get 20 touchdowns, and we did go that far when it came to projecting Genty, just because how impressive he was last year. It's like, okay, this guy is going to have just a monster season, but like you said, there's a difference between monster and historic, and that's what we ended up seeing. You can't really project for historic, but we were certainly confident that he was going to rock out this year.
Oh yeah. Okay, now we are switching over to something that's kind of fun that we're doing here. For those of you guys that have been watching it, you're used to it now. But for any of you guys new, this is the first episode you're watching of the CFF Top Gun Challenge. We're doing what we call confirmed kills, a little play on the Top Gun language. This is something to highlight each website and one of the most or the most accurate projection that they had, as well as kind of bringing up some honorable mentions as well. Other websites that did really good on players. And we'll start by highlighting Campus to Canton here. Their confirmed kill was with DJ Giddens from Kansas State. He finished with 218.6 fantasy points. This is one of those guys that we thought would be a bell cow back. Didn't quite live up to that workload expectation. That's why, as a consensus, we had him as the number four preseason running back. He finished at number 25. And with Campus to Canton, they had him projected at 224.81 fantasy points for a 6.21 point differential. Really good by that group over there at Campus to Canton. I'm going to give you guys over at RotoWire an honorable mention, confirmed kill. You guys had your projection at 225.6 fantasy points for a 7.0 point distribution or differential, excuse me. And so Giddens, as I mentioned, one of those guys that we thought, should be, and I don't remember, oh, yeah, right there, number four. So I had him at number four, and kind of there were some times where I wasn't sure if I wanted to put him ahead of Hampton in the preseason. Like both guys I like quite a bit, but like I ended up leaning toward leaving him at number four because we knew that they had a new young running quarterback coming in. Would you agree that maybe Avery Johnson and the ability for young quarterbacks to sometimes just pull the ball and keep it themselves probably limited Giddens's performance this year?
I would say so. I kind of thought that we were going to see a little bit of a better year from Avery Johnson. I was, impressed, especially by the running stuff last year. So that kind of kept a relative lit. I mean, we had a healthy projection, obviously, for Giddens, but, certainly not challenging for 300 points or anything like that. But yeah, I thought Avery Johnson would have a bigger deal. I have a wasted Heisman ticket that I bought at the Circa sportsbook over the summer to verify that. But yeah, that I mean, we liked Giddens a lot, but I'm glad that our process of kind of breaking down this offense ended up working out to where we had a pretty solid valuation of him.
Oh yeah, you guys and Campus Canton really did a great job there.
Definitely.
Looking over now at Let Purple Rain's confirmed kill, and it's a little sweet for me. Killing a duck is always a good thing.
Oh yeah.
Uh, Jordan James from Oregon, he finished with a 223.3 fantasy points. His preseason rank was in the teens. Outside of RotoWire, you guys were higher than everybody else. You had him at number 8. He finished running back 21. Um, I'd say it looks like Campus Canton was the best in terms of that preseason rank. They had him at 17. And, my projection on him was at 227.8 fantasy points, which ended up with a 4.5 point differential on that. And, I'm just handing out honorable mention, confirmed kills to you here, right and left. I mean, you're coming in again, the RotoWire team, 216.8 fantasy point projection for a 6.5 point differential. One thing I kind of found really interesting about the Oregon offense this year, when I rank teams for their fantasy run offense or fantasy run pass offense, I don't. I take like the team stats, but then I apply fantasy points to those stats and re-rank them on how many fantasy points that would generate. Because your traditional team stats, they just take yards and they don't really take touchdowns into consideration, or like for passing offenses, they don't take receptions. And those are all things that we get points for. And normally every year we're thinking of Oregon as like they're a top 10, top 15 fantasy run offense. And I don't remember where they finished the year, but toward the end of the year when I was doing one of my sit start podcast episodes here, like I think they're in the 40s, like the way that I calculate it. And it did kind of surprise me this year, but I think a lot of that just was the scoring opportunities were kind of taken away into the passing game more for Oregon. And both of us were really accurate in what we thought he would do. So we're not, I'm not kind of bringing this up like it's, he underachieved, but to me, doesn't it feel a little bit like he did underachieve, even though he's right on what we expected?
It does, because Oregon's the number one team in the country, and you kind of thought that maybe the more monster year was coming from him. The way that the underdog draft rooms were over the summer, he wasn't slipping past the middle of the second round. He was probably being drafted as a top 10 running back in those particular contests. So it just, I don't know. I guess it made sense for Oregon. It's sort of a downstream of a similar thing that we led the show off with, where we're talking about Ohio State or Georgia, where sure, like he's going to be the nominal number one guy, but Oregon has like the ability to kind of spread the wealth in that backfield. Noah Whittington is no slouch. Dylan Gabriel can run a little bit for his own part, and Oregon a lot of the time in kind of blowout situations where they're not going to need to overuse Jordan James. They're looking ahead to the playoff and everything like that. So all of that combined to kind of give us again, like you said, it's weird because we have him as a very strong candidate or strong running back there with 223 fantasy points, but or right around there. But yeah, it felt like there was still like a little bit of meat left on the bone.
And but we both were still very accurate because you mentioned, workload distribution between running back one, running back two, quarterback, blowout games. Um, there's a good history of stats for that. So we were able to bake that into the cake here for our projections. But yeah, like that's just been my observation. Think about Jordan James for the year. Like he did right exactly what I was thinking he'd do, but it just still feels a little bit like a letdown. What one guy who also and this kind of gets into your guys' confirmed kill. Someone that we know that we have a good history on, decent history with their coaches, how they tend to typically split carries, is Nick Singleton from Penn State. He finished the year with 185 fantasy points and the running back 36. The rankings are all across the board when you look at us sites. He finished the year 36. You guys were great. You had him pegged at number 38. For the consensus, he was 44, but he was as high as number 12 for the CFF site and as low as 79 for me. I kind of was expecting a lot more split carries here. So even though my ranking is really low, my fantasy point differential is right around Campus to Canton and CFF site. So that is one of these funny things. Why I like to tell people to don't get hung up on rankings so much and why we're talking projections because CFF site ranked 12th. Campus to Canton ranked 47th. Let Purple Rain ranked 79th, and we're all right around each other in projections. So sometimes the rankings aren't as great as compared to if you have some hard stats to go off of. But you guys did a great job on this one. Nailed the preseason rank. You had a 178.8 fantasy point projection for 6.2 differential, and your read, your thoughts as you looked at the Penn State offense, looked at how they do this year, and how you guys were able to just nail Singleton.
Well, I think that the thing is, kind of like you were saying, we have a known commodity, and like those can be a little bit rare in our game where we have Nick Singleton entering his third year, same coach, everything like that. So we had a good idea of who he was, but we also knew that Katron Allen was going to be a factor in that offense, and it was an offense that was just going to be splitting the carries. I think that Singleton getting a little bit dinged up, that it's not something that we necessarily expected, but we did kind of feel like Singleton's a guy who his best football might be ahead of him, and he just wasn't going to be like a tremendous fantasy asset this year. I think there were just too many things working against him. I think that um, tools wise, he's right up there, and as like a day two, day three type of draft prospect, but. Just for fantasy, you got to be able to separate that, and like you can't look ahead to Sundays too much and just say, oh, he's just gonna completely crush because no, Penn State they have games to win. They have an offense to run. They have Katron Allen who's ready to go as well, and they got Drew Aller dropping back and throwing it to Tyler Warren. So there's just enough there to where it's like, okay, Singleton, very good player, very talented player, but we don't really see the workload bearing out to where he's going to carry your fantasy team.
And that was kind of my thought in terms of the rank part. Like I was a little down on him being that guy that could carry your team. Um,
Right.
Going over now to our last confirmed kill for the CFF site, we have Darius Taylor from Minnesota, another known commodity, like you mentioned. He finished the year with 211.6 fantasy points. He's really highly ranked consensus in the preseason at number 10. He finished running back 26. And, the CFF site did an amazing job here with their projection. Um, They had him projected at 210.8 fantasy points for a 0.8 point differential. 8 yards, guys. 8 yards is what they were off on. So great job over there at CFF site. I mean, you guys nailed this one. And Campus to Canton, we got to hand out an honorable mention, confirmed kill to them too here. They had him projected at 204.68 fantasy points, and they came up with a 6.92 point differential. And Darius Taylor, and I'm not going to say with PJ Fleck at Minnesota that the days of the bell cow Minnesota running back that you just have to have are gone. But to me, they feel like they're watered down. And the last couple of years, and part of that is guys are getting dinged up because they're getting too many carries. I kind of view through my coaching lens. If I was PJ Fleck, I might start splitting the workload more. I might do what Ohio State did this year because you got a lot of good running backs. You don't need to pound them into the ground, but they are still, as a system, they're still higher workload, still pretty good. Like your observations the last couple of years, this year with Taylor, um, and also just your thoughts of the projection process. Like for me, actually both of us, we had him ranked at number 7. So like we're looking at him in the same lens, and it's hard to ignore that history, like I mentioned, of the Minnesota offense. But at the same time, this the recent trends kind of like they're trending down for the running back one in Minnesota.
Yeah, they do just kind of tend to wear the guys down. Like it feels like Fleck is whoever he kind of identifies as his guy. He is just going to kind of run him into the ground, and you just got to hope that we get far enough into the season where you're banking enough points, but you're also hoping that they're able to stay healthy there for your playoff push as well. But Taylor, definitely fit that bill. Like we had a healthy carry projection for him. I think it was like 257. So we definitely expected him to be getting the rock a lot, and that's just sort of um, you know college is so variable, but there are some kind of bankable things, and usually the starting running back for PJ Fleck at Minnesota is going to get a lot of volume. Now, is he going to be super efficient or explosive with it? That can change over time. Like Mo Ibrahim for example, that something like that. But Taylor, we gosh, the whole group here really kind of was able to kind of hone in on what Minnesota was going to do with Taylor, and I mean for everyone to be within 40 points of his final total is impressive, and three of us within 15 points. That goes to show that that there is something to knowing a system like how Minnesota goes.
Yep, and we're big. I'm not sure how much you guys dive into it. I know myself. I know Campus to Canton is that way. I know CFF site is that way, but big into system. And when you have good background information in your database that you can draw from, like that really does help. When you don't have good information, I mentioned Scott Frost coming to UCF. All I have is his Nebraska stats. I'm not looking forward to doing UCF this year at all. Versus like Oregon. Like, think about a lot of the teams we've been talking about today, or in these confirmed kills. Oregon, Penn State, Minnesota. Like these are established systems, good databases, and that's a big reason why we're able to be as accurate as we are here with these guys. Okay, let's wrap up the running back review. Going over all 60 players, working out the average differential points. We have a first place finish for Let Purple Rain with an average differential points of 55.49. RotoWire coming in second place. Good showing by you guys here with a average differential points of 63.21. CFF Sites taking third place with 65.92 average differential points, and Campus to Canton coming in fourth with 73.69 average differential points. So, we're talking at the top of the show like this is anybody's ball game. We were at the halfway point. We're now 3 rounds down, 1 to go. You guys, like you said, come back strong here. You had a really good showing, and UNCFF site right by each other. I mean, just about a 3 point difference between the two of you guys. So, really good job by you and your team there. And I'm guessing you definitely like seeing yourself toward the top of the board in this round.
No question. Running back is so important to your fantasy success and getting that right. So we worked hard over the summer to try to get these as dialed in as we could. So glad to kind of go back and take a little retrospective on how we did this season. And I think some of my other just kind of favorite running backs from this year that we didn't talk about today, but like Dylan Sampson was such a stud, and I have a big soft spot for Taj Brooks as well.
Me
He was
too.
a guy that I just love a big hulking running back like that. And Texas Tech is such like a great system because they just ran at warp speed, so you don't really think of running backs usually from Texas Tech. You usually think of an air raid passing attack, but there was still more than enough for Brooks to be that dude this year. So yeah, a couple other shout outs to those guys.
Oh yeah, Brooks was the glue that kept that offense together. At,
Yep.
at one point, I think I had Brooks as my RB3. I was a little over over on him. I kind of put him back down into a little better position, but like yeah, I like Brooks a lot. Um, and now, as we shift over to the standings, the updated standings, Let Purple Rain has taken first place with 13 competition points. CFF site is hanging on here at second place with 8 competition points, but RotoWire, you guys are right on their heels in third place with 6 competition points. We have Campus Canton in fourth place with 3. We have 1 round left in the competition. So with a maximum of 6 points for first place that's left, the first place for the whole competition, it looks like it's going to come down to myself and CFF site. You guys, unfortunately, you're mathematically eliminated from first place, but you and CFF site and even Campus to Canton, everybody has a shot there at second place. So you guys are you and CFF site and Campus Canton, I think, could have definitely a tough one, battling it out for second place because somewhat like if you can get 6 points, you're jumping up to 12 total competition points, and even if CFF site lands second place with 3, they'll have 11. So you can leapfrog them to take second place. And that actually would be pretty interesting. Let's say I throw a goose egg at quarterback, you would have 13 points for first place, 12 points for second place, 11 points for third place, and that would be it'd be funny and it'd be kind of ironic because of just how talented all of us are at these different sites and how competitive this competition has been. So I'm guessing obviously you want to take home second place, even though first place would be sweeter.
Yeah, no, we're going with the best that we can do. So that's silver in this case, but it will be interesting to see how it shakes out. Obviously, the competition is really tough, and based on you through 3 rounds having 13 points, I'm gonna guess that you probably aren't throwing a goose egg on quarterbacks. So yeah, we got our work cut out for us, and hopefully it pans out, and we can at least get to second here. But I mean, really tough competition. CFF site, great. Campus to Canton, and what you're doing over at Let Purple Rain. I mean, just it's awesome. It's the old adage of iron sharpening iron. I think this is a really cool project to just kind of see how all of us are doing, and I think it makes us all kind of in the back of our head. It's like a nice little healthy competition for the work that we're putting in during the off season in particular. It's like, okay, we got to make sure that we're leaving no stone unturned when we're churning out these projections.
Yeah, and you mentioned you don't think I'm going to pull a goose egg in the last round. That's actually something that benefits you. Like you should be rooting for RotoWire taking first place, me taking second place, and then you just have CFF site and Campus to Canton battling, for that one third place point.
Hmm.
So like I'm one of those guys that can like where I come in could be beneficial to any of you guys battling for second place. As long as I don't throw a goose egg. Because if I don't throw a goose egg, all 3 of you guys are getting points. It's just a matter of where. So you obviously want me to steal points from your competition.
Correct.
All right. I want to thank our guest today, John McKechnie, for being on the show. Once again, you can find him on X at Johns_tailgate. And John, let everybody know out there, what they can find over at RotoWire, what's going on right now, what do you guys have coming up in the future, or whether it's near term or long term, and what are you excited about?
All right. So obviously it's bowl season is here, kicks off this Saturday. And so we have our writer roundtable of all of our picks against the spread. Chris Benzine is writing up some bowl season preview, and we will have DFS articles and betting articles throughout the entirety of bowl season, starting from the earliest ones all the way through the national championship game. So excited for that, and then just really excited for how the chips fall with the transfer portal and everything like that this coming spring, and kind of being able to take a look with fresh eyes and being ready to kind of soak in the news, see what's new, see what's different for 2025, and get it rocking from there. So I love the off season. It's your time to kind of get real granular. When it's in season, bullets are flying. It's just like you're trying to keep your head on straight, but you get a little bit more time to just kind of take it at your own pace, look at things at a new and different way, and I'm looking forward to that.
Good to hear, man. And I want to thank everybody here today for watching the 2024 CFF Top Gun Challenge. Once again, you got some of the best CFF sites on the internet battling to see who's going to be the best of the best at preseason projections. For full coverage of this article and every round of the competition, you can go over to letpurplerain.com. The running back review article, there's a link for it in the description below. And once again, there's a link to every website, this competition, in the description below. This competition, we have one round left. That'll run through December 19th. This episode, you mentioned that you guys are doing the bowl coverage, which starts this Saturday. For the audience here, we're filming on Friday. This will air on Tuesday. And the quarterback episode will be airing that Thursday, the 19th. So the competition's getting really close to running its course. And to let you guys know a little bit with letpurplerain.com, things that we got coming in January, I'll be reviewing transfer portal changes, coaching changes, bowl game breakout players, and I'm excited to do my 2025 way too early player rankings. Once again, like and subscribe to the channel. You don't want to miss out on any of that content, and a lot of the items I'm mentioning here will be done through the podcast as well as article format. And letpurplerain.com still have the 7-day free trial going on. I want to thank all of you guys for reading and watching Let Purple Rain. You guys are the reason I'm able to keep doing this work. Thanks again for joining Let Purple Rain podcast. Your CFF Rain starts here.